The general of the Fire Nation army had turned to Ba Sing Se's greatest tea brewer, and the honorable journey was a tale filled with sighs. Iroh has had an indelible mark upon the lore of The Last Airbender, and everywhere he went, the world was left better than when he found it. And no matter which side of history he found himself on, no one by his side had a bad word to say about him. This is a video about Uncle Iroh and the strength of forgiveness and deep humility. If you would have asked me 10 years ago who my favorite character was, I would have said Sokka. He's the goofy older brother encumbered with the responsibility of his younger sister.
You don't like my steering.
And despite the role reversal of Katara being his caretaker, he proves himself worthy of leadership time and time again. My favorite part about his character is that it bounces everywhere in terms of narrative, and his quest from doofus to hero, it calls for so many different roles, like lover boy, comedic relief, tactician, swordsman, leader, hero. He gives Zuko a run for his money in terms of character development. There's an organic understanding to his arc that anyone can read. Those first few dominoes are easy to flick and snowball into the character we see by the end of the series. But since then, I've revisited the show a third time, the first in a near decade. And as expected, with my adulthood came the love for nuances. And a subplot in the series poises a poetic struggle, so undeniable, so dramatic, it was impossible to look away from. That of the strained relationship of Prince Zuko and General Iroh, the once honored crown family of the Fire Nation Empire. Let's discuss the difference between loyalty and obedience. When confronted with a child who speaks out of line, Ozai resorts to an Old Testament-style punishment, challenging his only son to Agni Kai, a firebending ritual duel with a victory won only by burning your opponent. And how does Zuko respond to such a harrowing threat? He falls to his knees in fear and submission, begging for his father's forgiveness. Despite his pleading, these cries fall upon deaf ears as Ozai utters a statement that crystallizes him as the first of many abusers in Zuko's life.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher. I looked away.
Iroh is a man who has seen suffering, be it at his own hand or that of another. Scarred through a life of hardship, no one in this world would understand the senselessness of violence like he would. Losing his only son, Lu Tin, would irreparably change him. Much like Zuko, he was left broken, scarred, and missing someone very, very important. Iroh differs from many men, wise enough to understand that he lost his son not to the Earth Kingdom, but to war, and a pointless one at that. Rage can change a man. The prince is an example, even his father is. Ozai may be Fire Lord to many, but Zuko has and will always remain Prince Zuko. The respect remains. If there was anyone in this world who knew that love was the answer to changing fate, to carving your fingers into life and making your own way, it'd be Uncle Iroh. Every wrinkle in time, every twist in fate, he had kept an open mind and heart. He expected nothing, and he celebrated everything.
Happy birthday, my son.
In Book 3's The Headband, we see the first significant rift between the two, where in the recent past, for the first time in the show, Iroh refuses to speak to his nephew. Zuko has decided to bend a knee to Azula, his greatest enemy, his sister. And in his eyes, after all that has happened, it would be far easier to be accepted back into the family, though his legacy would be stained, much like his uncle's, marred by an irreparable failure. But he'd be promised a life, a safe one at that. And driven by anger and fear, Zuko confronts Iroh in prison. Iroh spares Zuko only a few words, that he's related to an avatar on his mother's side, once again confirming Zuko's place in life. Iroh's explained ad nauseum that the destiny he follows is one manufactured for him, not one he's decided. This fate would bring only war, not the peace Zuko has began to see, and certainly not the peace Iroh has lived for.
And there is no hope at all.
No, Zuko. You must never give in to despair. Allow yourself to slip down that road and you surrender to your lowest instincts.
All along, he had known Zuko's role, the hapless son of a megalomaniac who would stop this horrible war. And eventually, he'd take one breath and see in himself what Iroh saw all this time. The scene that exemplifies this loyalty more than any would be the third to last episode of the series, Sozin's Comet, Part 2.
Zuko, you're sorry for what you did, right?
More sorry than I've been about anything in my entire life.
Once again, Zuko finds himself upon his knees, pleading to a father figure to forgive him. Zuko has been taught by abuse to beg for favor and that his authority is forfeit. He assumes Iroh is furious with this transgression, but why would he not? Ozai obliterated his chance at life and exiled him to an impossible task for the simplest mistake. But even now, Zuko wouldn't care what the Fire Lord thinks. That's not his father. Iroh is. And a life without Uncle Iroh is not one worth living. To be harmed by someone he loves is not what scares him, but to be not loved at all. That is Zuko's greatest fear. And knowing this all, what does Iroh do?
I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but How can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me.
I was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you lost your way.
It shakes me every time I see it. It's the most cathartic scene in the series, and it sits in the Hall of Fame upon many more of its kind. You see, the two most powerful men of the Fire Nation exemplify two very different qualities. Each foster a relationship, one more forgiving and effortless. The other is not an option, more so a prison of convenience and honor. Iroh was wise enough to take the banality of life as a reminder that permanence is a lie. Love is the only constant, and for good fortune to find us, we must travel with the ebb and flow of life around us. Iroh's love, much like himself, remains even in whispers deep within the hidden corners of the earth. Our uncle, whose love is undying.
Ever since I lost my son,
Uncle, you don't have to say it.
I think of you as my own.